Great. Thank you, Nicole. Thanks to everybody for being here and for your interest in our program. I would first say that after Nicole told me, I think over 450 days, if I'm remembering right, since the last time we competed in an official game for Penn State, we could not be more eager to kick off the 2021 season this Friday against the University of Maryland. Um, it's going to be very different this spring because it is Big Ten only. However, I also feel there's a positive aspect to that. This is a very special conference. We're proud to represent Penn State on the soccer field, and we're extremely proud to be part of the Big Ten men's soccer conference, which, in my opinion, is one of the very strongest, if not the strongest, top to bottom in the entire country. Before we take questions, two real points. First and foremost, a huge thank you to our players for their attitude, their discipline, their determination and character that they've just demonstrated since the start of this pandemic. It has not been easy. It's not always been perfect, but they have hung in there, and they deserve this opportunity to get ready for a real game this coming Friday. And also to Penn State, the university, the administration, Sandy Barber, Lynn Holler, and the athletic administration, and countless people throughout our athletic department have made this possible for us to resume playing. It's very important to me that we not forget that we still are in the midst of a terrible pandemic, which continues to have devastating medical consequences for people. So we feel very fortunate. Soccer is all important to us. It's what we do, what we love, but it's not as important as health and staying well. And I know the Penn State community, the Center County community has rallied behind Penn State, behind the athletics program. And this game Friday will have a tremendous meaning because of the connections to our community, to our university, our student athletes, their families, our alumni, and so many people that are making this possible. So we're just humbled and excited to pull on the jersey once again and get to compete in an official game.
All right, feel free to raise your hand and we'll get you unmuted and able to ask Coach quick questions. We'll start with Otis.
Hey, Coach, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you well.
Awesome. How do you feel about the defensive depth of the team after the news of Michael Gaines being out for the season?
We've prided ourselves on our defensive qualities. So when you talk about the defensive side, I'll certainly address Michael in a second. However, the way that we go about our play, we have to defend as a team, and that includes the strikers right through to the goalkeepers. So we've been really encouraged by our defensive play of all aspects of that, whether you're talking about pressing higher up the field or defending more immediately in front of your own goal. We have an outstanding goalkeeper crew led by Coach Clint Long. Chris Shakes, Owen Elliott, David Aylesberg, and Alex Morgan are four really top goalkeepers. And then in front of them, we have a tremendous leader in Brandon Hackenberg and a lot of depth in the back. We were really disappointed for Michael. He has an injury which will rule him out for the spring season. In his usual graceful and mature manner, he's handled himself really well. I was right near him when that happened. We expect he'll return eventually, but it is a loss because Michael was developing really well and looking to play a significant role this spring. But we know that we have some really good guys that can support the defensive efforts of our group and step into the hole that Michael has left us.
Peter Terpstra.
Hey, Coach. Not to relive all this again, but I guess going back to when fall sports were kind of pushed off, what kind of emotions did your guys have to wade through to get to this point?
Yeah, it's like I'll make light of it. It's like you ate way too much for lunch and then jumped on a roller coaster, and it felt awful. Much more serious than that, of course, but it was a grind. And when we got, I don't know if the general public would be aware, but we came back to Penn State around or about July 1st to resume training for the season. So we went through all that to try to get ready for a season. And then literally 3 hours before our first practice in August, the Big Ten made their announcement that the season had been postponed/canceled. So that was very difficult. We recovered from that. And then there was a second wave where football was reinstated, and nobody could have been happier for those student athletes or the staff to have that happen. there was a little bit of a period where we had some hope we might be able to play some games, and that didn't happen. So that was once again very difficult. However, we tried to capitalize on the opportunity to get better, and it was really a great development tool for our players. I'll be honest, towards late October, as we approached early November, Thanksgiving time, it did start to feel a little long without games to prepare for. And there were some emotional days that we went through with players kind of, you felt a little bit lost as a coach, not having there was no sort of anchor or focal point of trying to prepare for a game. So it was really unnerving and difficult for us as we navigated that. But here we are. It doesn't seem possible. All of a sudden, the game week is here. But no problem in answering the question, asking the question, Peter. It's what we lived for and lived through, and now we live to play against Maryland Friday.
Trent?
Hey, Coach, how's it going?
I'm doing well. I'm excited. How you doing?
Good.
Good.
I was curious. So, like, were you expecting to have this type of schedule this year against only Big Ten teams? And has that at all changed you and your team's mindset or preparation, considering you're quite familiar with all these teams you're going to be playing?
Yeah, I would link it to Peter's question a little bit. Trent, we probably had, we must be approaching 100 Zoom video conferences with the Big Ten and with the coaches group. So we had every iteration of a schedule, non-conference included, Big Ten only, tournament formats, bubbles, you name it. We had every proposed schedule that you can think of on the docket. Ultimately, I think we landed where I believe it's the best chance to execute on a season. So it was really, everything was considered. I think two things I would point to. One, we don't have any exhibition games. So that's a little bit unsettling going into a real game against a 3-time national championship opponent that, since I've been at Penn State, we lost down there in overtime in 2018, and we won a fantastic game, one of the best college soccer games I've ever been involved in, and we happened to win it last year, 2019, in overtime. So we expect a highly competitive game. So jumping from training with no exhibition games to that kind of level of competition, I think for both teams will be really unusual. In terms of our approach, we've been watching, previous games against Maryland, tendencies, but the reality is, I would question how relevant that is, given the fact that there's been roster transition. We don't really know what they've been up to, and they don't necessarily know what we've been up to, So I think we have to stick to our principles in attack and defense, trust in the depth that we have in the team, and play with some sense of freedom. And I said this at the outset, once the whistle blows, you can be sure that our coaching staff, our players are going to do everything possible to win that game. But there is something larger at play here, the ability to compete and play the sport we love again. So very unique, and I don't know what to expect come 6 p.m. on Friday. I really don't. But I do know that our players will give a great account of themselves.
Rory?
Hey, Coach. What would you say is this team's best quality heading into the season?
I'm excited to see our unity come to life in the form of a soccer game. We have a very tight team with great chemistry. And one thing I think we do really well is we play in both phases of the game with that team concept as the primary tool that we have. So we have a great amount of depth in our attacking positions, for example, where if you had been able to watch our team practice, the speed that we can play at, our passing, the technical level of this team is certainly the highest since I've been at Penn State. So that's going to be exciting, I think, to watch. I do believe it'll take time to, get that up to speed in a real game, but really encourage what we see in practice. And then defensively, we've been showing in practice great tenacity and determination to get the ball back when we lose it. And that there's that kind of spirit in the group, so that, hey, if you give the ball away, I'll help you get it back. If I make a mistake, I'll make up for your mistake. And I think those moments in the game are instantaneous, and you have to rely on your instinct and your reactions to make a play in the critical moments. So those are things I think that will ultimately decide the final score Friday and beyond.
Peter?
Coach, you had a great season last year. I know it's a long time, I guess a long time ago at this point, but what kind of foundation, have you guys set, and how is this program progressing?
Well, time will tell how we're progressing. I'm encouraged. I feel really good about our group. Um, we've been looking back at lineups and video of previous games. As I mentioned, that game in 2019 against Maryland, the starting lineup of in that game, almost all the players are back within the group except for Aaron Malloy and Will Campbell and Christian Sloat. So there's three guys that played in that game. Everyone else was involved in that. So I think there is a familiarity with that level of play. And in that 2019 season, that was, I think we can humbly say, was successful, short of what we had hoped for at the end of it all, but was still successful. That there's a lot of now sophomores that were highly involved in that team and played big roles. And now, it'll be a test for us to see how far we've come in that time of working with them and developing. And that's what I think we've really focused on. Is it's been incredibly disappointing, as you can imagine, not to be able to play games, but we've used this time to develop. And I think some of those guys almost all the guys really have made great progress in preparing for a game like Maryland on Friday.
Otis.
Hey, Coach. We saw a lot of the 4-4-2 last year. Is this something you want to continue this season as far as formations are concerned? And if so, who do you think is going to partner with Liam up front?
Yeah, I think system-wise, that will be the foundation of how we go about our business. But one of the things that we've had the opportunity to do during this long stretch without official games is to experiment tactically and have some flexibility and some variation within our systems. And that's another area where I would want to give compliments to our players. They've been really open to those kind of ideas of being creative. In fact, even in some of our practice sessions, we've said things like, hey, we've thought up this practice session. It might seem a little crazy, right? But stay with us and tell us what you think. This is kind of out of the box, for example. So we've talked about that in terms both of systems of play, but also in game scenarios. We've done a lot of, hey, there's 10 minutes to go in the Big Ten semifinal. We're 1-0 up. We're away from home. How do we see this game out? Does that make sense? In terms of personnel, one of the things that we've looked at, we are going to play every 4 days after not playing for more than a year. The physical demand, the psychological demands of that will be significant. So we don't think we can just throw a team out there, starting 11, and ride them until they can't walk anymore, right? And one of the things that we've talked about, I'll address the position you mentioned, Otis, the center forwards. We have 4 guys that are really talented in that position, and I think could play for a lot of Division I teams. So we've said, hey, rather than worry about, I played half the game this game or 2/3 of the game the next game, or I started this one and not the other, can we think about being the best group of forwards in the country? And somebody might have a great couple games, but on Friday there'll be 17 days. That'll be game 1 of a 5-game stretch in 17 days. So the message is we're going to need everybody to contribute, and Liam Butts, Danny Bloyu, Josh DeBora, Peter Mangione, and possibly some other guys who have to fill in. But that's one of the real things I'm most excited about this group, is that we have options. So if a guy's, rolls his ankle and is out for a, part of a game or a game, we have the ability to cover for that.
Trent.
So you kind of touched on not having any exhibition games. I'm just wondering what kind of steps you have implemented in your practices and stuff to kind of avoid and lessen that impact and make sure that your team doesn't come out kind of flat.
Yeah. Well, we have been very fortunate to work with a great performance team here. So our team trainer, Matt Armistead, our performance coach, Christina Jeffries, there's a huge team here behind the scenes. Nicole, I can't forget Carl and Adriana from performance psychology, Nick Yanko, our nutrition specialist, Josh Nelson and John Fleury who are our sports scientists. So that whole group, Trent, has come together to plan out the season. One huge thing that's been a plus is the length of time we've had in preseason. So normally, just for, if you guys don't know, normally in August, we'll come back and have 12 days, 13 days before our first game. And that's tough to get a team ready in that short space of time. We've been here since January 10th. Admittedly, there's been we had to quarantine at the start and test and all that stuff, but we've had a good 4 or 5 weeks of highly active training. And the team that I've just mentioned have helped us to plan that out. One thing we've done, a real specific answer to your question, we've played interval games. So rather than playing, say, 11v11 for 90 minutes, in the inter-squad practice environment, those games can kind of drag on and not really be representative of what a competitive game will look like. So as opposed to just 2 45 minutes, we've done, for example, 4 15-minute periods or 3 25-minute periods, or that kind of thing. And the intensity level we measure with the Catapult tracking software. For example, Sunday we played a total of 73 minutes, but everyone's output physically was over 100% of their normal game output. I'm getting a little bit into the details of it, but how we plan it out. But we want to, the general point is keep training at a very, very high intensity level, even if it's a bit shorter, so it more closely resembles what the guys are going to experience in a real game situation. I'll let you know if it works Friday night.
Any final questions for Coach here?
Thanks, everyone. We appreciate your interest in our team, and stay safe. Take care. Thanks, Nicole.
Thanks, Coach.